So thank you, Marcia, for that long reading. And don't take this as an apology. It's not my fault. But during Lent, we get these long readings, and I'll just say, welcome to Lent. But from that great story, we have the wonderful expression, here's mud in your eye. And what a weird expression outside of the context of this story. As far as I can tell, there are two meanings for here's mud in your eye. The first meaning is an insult. And the idea is if you're in a horse race, the one who comes in second is behind the horse that's in the lead, of course, and that horse is throwing mud up on the rider. So that happy person can't be the winner, right? In this context, here's mud in your eye is like loser. But the other context is as a toast, where you raise your glass in the expression of well wishing. Some people say to your health or many other things. Others say, here's mud in your eye, which I think is a direct reference to Jesus healing the blind man by putting mud in his eye. I'm not sure if people think alcohol has the same effect or not. And if that expression is not strange enough, what on earth was that gospel story all about? In my interpreter's Bible, the story is given the heading, Healing of the Man Born Blind. I guess the story is about healing, right? Simple. I'm not so sure I agree with the editors of the interpreter's Bible on this one, though. I mean, obviously, the key story that drives the entire reading includes Jesus healing a blind person. But I don't really think this is what this is about at all. For one thing, of the 41 verses that Marcia had to read, only 2 verses describe Jesus healing a man born blind. The other 39 verses are about misunderstandings and controversies surrounding the healing. So I think we need to revisit this passage. And what did the people in the story think was actually going on? We can start with the disciples because they open their mouths first. The disciples see the blind man, they realize he's blind, and they instantly jump to the conclusion that the blindness was caused by sin. And so they question Jesus about guilt and fault. They want to know why the man is blind. They express no concern for the man. They offer no help or food or water. Many ancient cultures, of course, and even modern cultures, affirm a basic relationship between punishment and morality. Good people should get rewarded. The whole book of Job in the Old Testament is a struggle around that idea. Why bad things happen to good people. But in our story, the disciples do not even question whether sin was the cause of the man's blindness. They only say, whose sin was it? The Pharisees, to their credit, believe the man and his story. But they are also not particularly interested in the gift of sight. The Pharisees are only concerned with the process that was used to perform the healing. The Pharisees don't seem to blink at the idea the man can get his sight, but they struggle hard with the idea that this miracle could happen on a Sabbath day. The Pharisees don't care about the man. They're completely consumed with the identity of the person who did the healing. And what about the parents? We might think the parents would be delighted that their son can finally see their faces and that they no longer have to support the man because he can work now. But the parents do not celebrate the gift of new sight for their son at all. The parents are only interested in not getting involved and not getting ejected from the synagogue. And how about the group we might just call the crowd? I'm not sure they even knew the man was cured of blindness. They don't even recognize him. They seem to only understand that a troublemaker is in their midst, and they want the problem and the person chucked out. The crowd has no imagination to wonder, for example, hang on, if Jesus can do that, maybe Jesus could help me, which is a very obvious step to take. But at least the man himself was pleased. I know one thing. I was blind. Now I see. It's really too bad that once the man could see, all he saw was people arguing and bickering about fault, guilt, identity, process, wanting to not get involved, wanting to eject troublemakers. Every time I read this story, I think the man probably yearned to be blind again, and maybe deaf as well, so he wouldn't have to watch all these theatrics. The man may even thought he was better off before. So maybe we need to start the conversation a bit further back, starting with a basic question like what is healing and what is cure anyway? And I find this a very interesting topic because in our society, we often use the words healing and cure interchangeably. And for me, the terms are not only different, but they're almost practically opposites of each other in a way. And up till now in this reflection, I have been using the words interchangeably too, but I'm about to stop. So, what is the difference between cure and healing? Well, according to one source, healing and cure are related concepts, but they have different meanings. Cure refers to the elimination of a disease or a condition, typically through medical treatment or other interventions. A cure may involve the use of medications, surgery, medical procedures to remove or treat an underlying cause of illness. Healing, on the other hand, is a broader concept that encompasses more than physical health. It refers to the process of becoming whole or complete, which may involve addressing physical, emotional, and spiritual issues. Healing can occur even when cure is not possible, and may involve learning to live with a chronic illness or condition, but in a way that maximizes well being. Healing is a holistic approach that involves treating the whole person. Healing may involve addressing underlying emotional or psychological issues that are contributing to physical symptoms, or working to improve one's overall quality of life, regardless of whether cure is possible. Cure is focused on the physical aspect of a disease or condition, while healing is a more comprehensive approach that addresses the emotional and spiritual aspects of health and well being. And if you disagree with that quote, please come to the Lenten group Wednesday night. But in really short form, the way I look at it, cure is like a destination, and healing is a journey. So perhaps today you are hoping for I would say, healing service. It would be a cure service today. I'm very sorry to disappoint you. Perhaps you're hoping you'd see somebody hobble up on the steps and I would cure them of whatever their mobility and they would throw their crutches across the sanctuary. Well, I'm sorry to say your expectations may not be met today. I said I'm passionate about healing many times, but I have to tell you, I'm not that interested in cure. Not professionally, anyway. And that was true of Jesus as well. Jesus healed people. I'm not sure he cured anybody. I mean, take our story today. We call the story of healing the person born blind, which we should really call curing the person born blind. But in the story, Jesus cures somebody. Okay. And I agree, curing somebody of blindness would qualify as a cure. But in that, as I've said, in that long story of 41 verses, only 2 verses are about curing the blind person. The other 39 verses, I argue, are about healing. And just about everyone in the story is offered healing, or at least a possibility of healing. To me, the story is not really about the formerly blind person at all. The story is about Jesus offering healing to an entire community. So, who found healing in the story? Or at least, who was offered healing? Well, I would argue the disciples found some healing. The disciples begin with the assumption that the man was born blind because of sin. But Jesus opens their minds far beyond that. Jesus heals the disciples of their limited vision of what God's grace actually looks like. The Pharisees are offered healing. Jesus helps them see that restoring sight to a person is more important than following a bunch of rules anyway. The crowd are offered healing. Jesus helps the crowd actually see the person that they'd been ignoring for decades. And in the process, Jesus helps the crowd see themselves better. I call that healing. Perhaps Jesus cured the blind person. Cool. But I'm far more interested in how Jesus brought healing to virtually everyone in the story by helping them all see better. If Jesus did cure the blind person, that person is long dead and gone anyway. But helping a community find healing, particularly the healing of learning to see more clearly, is something that continues even today, perhaps even right here. I'd probably date myself by saying it this way, but I say healing is cool. Personal healing involves taking a proactive approach towards self care and working through issues that are negatively impacting one's well being. The goal of personal healing is to help individuals gain a greater understanding of themselves, their emotions, their experiences, as well as developing skills and tools necessary to cope with stress, overcome challenges, and lead a happier, more fulfilling life. So that highlights another difference between cure and healing. Cure, as I've been defining it, is generally something external to us. It's something other people, like doctors, do to us. Cure is something that medications do to us. Cure is mainly about external forces. Healing, however, is internal. It is about personal growth. It's about our own ability to see more clearly and navigate our own lives better. I mean, yes, other people can help us find healing too, of course, but ultimately, healing is what we do for ourselves. Healing is internal. So, in summary, cure is about what external forces can do for us. Healing is about how we internally change our lives to be better, in line with the spirit, too, I would add. So, I assume after hearing that sales pitch for healing, it must be something we all want, right? Healing sounds fantastic. Don't we all want healing? And you can hear the echoes to don't we all want peace? Because it's kind of the same question. Don't we all want to live more fulfilling lives? Well, as I have matured or aged, whichever it is, I've come to realize many people do not actually want healing. They may want the benefits that would come from healing, but they're not interested in the internal work. Often, people who resist healing simply project their issues onto other people because it seems far easier just to blame other people, blame the government, blame the church, those people, whatever that means today, this week. Easier to blame those people for our woes rather than to realize we ourselves might be happier if we managed our own attitudes a little better. Projecting our own unhappiness never works because healing is not an external thing. Healing is internal. Healing means we are prepared to deal with our own baggage and luggage. Projecting our own insecurities onto other people is therefore a complete waste of time. And waiting for other people to change so we do not have to is a recipe for disappointment. Perhaps people who resist healing would want healing if it did not involve change. Because nobody likes change, right? But how could healing not involve change? When we refuse to change, we get the status quo. And let's be honest, if the status quo was working for us, why are we talking about healing in the first place? There would be no need for healing. And there's no possibility of healing without change because healing would itself be a change. There's another reason why people resist healing, and I need to share a story. I think I've shared this story before, but I think I'll explain it differently anyway. One of my favorite Jesus healing stories. I'm reminded of a very unpopular Jesus story. It's about a person who became a leper. And as a leper, they realized the only occupation they could engage in was begging. And so the person became a beggar. But one day the person met Jesus, and Jesus cured the man's leprosy. Wonderful news, right? Life changing. Well, no, actually. Because after the person was cured of leprosy, they continued to beg. Begging, which had originally been a response to leprosy, had become over time tied to the person's identity. Curing the leprosy did not stop the person from begging. The man, in fact, resented being made well. The person actually accused Jesus of taking away his livelihood as a beggar by curing his leprosy. The person was cured, but refused to allow himself to be healed. Now, granted, that story is not found in the Bible. It's found in the 1979 Monty Python movie, The Life of Brian. But I like to share the story because I believe the story is found all around us too. Me too. The story is found in our society, even in our churches. The story is found perhaps in our own lives. Because sometimes we are wounded in life and we have great need for healing. But over time, years, decades, sometimes that wounding becomes part of our own identity, like with the leper. And when our wounds become part of our identity, we may not actually want that healing. Sometimes we choose to hold on to our woundings because they're a part of how we define who we are. But that is always a choice. And I'm not saying it's a bad choice always. But we can at any moment choose differently. And it's Lent. And Lent is a great time to choose differently if we want to. Now, earlier I said I'm sorry if I disappointed anyone who came here hoping to see crutches fly around the sanctuary. And I understand your disappointment. I've actually been in churches that had those kinds of services. I don't remember crutches, but I remember seeing those kinds of healings. And those services are very exciting, right? So now I'm a little bit disappointed. I want to see that. So tell you what, let's just do it. Right now. Now is the perfect time to see some crutches fly around the sanctuary. Are you ready? Now, what crutches might we choose to throw away? Well, I have an incomplete list. Crutches including denial and avoidance, need for control, holding resentment, being judgmental, holding anger, feeling powerless. These are all crutches, whether we talk about them in those terms or not. These are all crutches that we sometimes use to get through our days. But the great thing about crutches is we can throw them away. Or maybe you're thinking of a different crutch. I'm sure you are. I can add to that list for no problem for myself. I invite us over the week to reflect on your life. Consider, are you using some crutches you might actually want to throw away during Lent? Easter is almost here. Resurrection is almost here, just a couple of weeks away. And resurrection for me is not about the resuscitation of the corpse of Jesus. Resurrection is about finding new life. And one amazing way to find new life is to find our own healing, or at least throw away a crutch. What resurrection, what healing do you want in 2026? Because I believe people in this church can help you find it. Throw away some of your crutches. Open yourself to new life and to healing. You're worth it. Healing is a gift, and it is always just right here. It is always right now. The only question is whether or not we actually want it at this point in our lives. Do we want to spend the rest of our lives trapped behind a wall? Or do we want to live into the freedom that lies just beyond what is holding us back? Healing is a gift. Embrace it. Live it. Live. Amen.